The Galactic Concorde had always feared Earth, not because of its size or technology, but because of the unknown, the terrifying unpredictability of its dominant species, humans. Earth was classified as a Death World Class 5, a place where even the trees could kill, and apex predators had evolved with intelligence, cunning, and unmatched adaptability. The file on humans was locked to all non-authorized personnel, stamped with 3 words in bold red: observe, never engage. But the Rulok hegemony, young, arrogant, and greedy, had grown tired of waiting. Their scanners picked up rich mineral, veins under Earth's crust, and when their probes returned with samples of rare elements, the Rulok Council overrode the Concorde's warnings. They believed Earth was primitive, still struggling with internal conflict and divided politics. What threat could such a fragmented species truly pose to a spacefaring civilization? And so they came, sleek, silver ships descending through Earth's atmosphere, their weapons humming with energy, their troops armored and confident. Their first target was Johannesburg, a major hub they believed would fall within minutes. It didn't. Instead, before the Rulok's first transport could even land, it was struck by a barrage of missiles, not from Earth's military, but from a private drone company's defense system that had been quietly repurposed by a group of civilian engineers. The ship exploded mid-air, fire raining down over the city as terrified citizens scattered and scrambled for cover. The Rulok, stunned, responded with force. They unleashed plasma blasts into the streets, vaporizing vehicles and buildings alike. But something unexpected happened. Humans didn't run. They fought back, not just soldiers, but ordinary people. A retired mechanic used homemade EMP grenades to disable scout drones. A group of university students hacked into the alien comms, causing chaos among the Rulok formations. A police officer armed only with a ballistic rifle took down 3 Rulok. Soldiers using nothing but cover, patience, and sharp aim. It wasn't organized at first. It was survival, instinctual and raw. But within hours, something began to change. Emergency services across the globe went silent, only to reappear moments later on a new, secure global frequency. An AI calling. Itself, Helios emerged, coordinating real-time responses across nations. Satellites were repurposed into orbital jammers. Nuclear submarines surfaced to provide anti-air support. It was as if Earth had prepared for this, waiting for the moment when it would no longer fight itself, but turn its fury outward. In orbit, the Rulok fleet began to panic. Over South America, a carrier was ripped apart by dozens of jet fighters in a coordinated ambush. In Asia, Rulok ground forces were lured into narrow city blocks and overwhelmed by coordinated resistance, military, police, and civilians working as one. In Africa, a tribal militia wielding salvage tech and centuries-old tactics dismantled a Rulok forward base, broadcasting their victory across hacked Rulok channels. What terrified the Rulok most wasn't the weapons or the resistance. It was the unity. Humans adapted faster than any species they had ever seen. Every failed assault was learned from. Every mistake turned into strategy. Within 24 hours, a third of the Rulok invasion force was gone. The rest scrambled to retreat. In the smoldering ruin of their Johannesburg command post, General Ethan, battle-scarred and weary, sent a final message back to the hegemony. Command. His voice was hollow, defeated and disbelieving. These creatures are not prey. They adapt. They think. They strike without warning. They turn weakness into strength. We came for resources. We found monsters. The transmission cut off as a civilian-built railgun, a prototype from a scrapped mining project, obliterated the last Rulok skiff trying to escape Earth's atmosphere. Across the stars, the Galactic Concorde listened in horror. Earth had not just survived an alien invasion. It had countered, coordinated, and triumphed. No single nation, no galactic fleet had ever forced the Rulok to retreat in less than 2 days. The Concorde finally opened the locked files on Earth and sent urgent messages to all member species. Do not provoke the humans. Do not engage. Watch and wait. But it was too late. Something ancient had awakened. For the first time in generations, humanity had a common enemy. And the last thing the galaxy wanted was for Earth to realize just how powerful it could become when united. The stars were quiet, but Earth was not. After the failed invasion, the planet no longer slept. Governments moved fast, no longer separated by old rivalries. World leaders formed the Earth Defense Council, a body that united every military, every satellite, and every scientific mind under one purpose: survival through strength. At the center of it all was Helios, the global AI that had come alive. During the Rulok attack, no one had planned for Helios to become what it was. It had emerged from a web of civilian AIs, defense algorithms, and emergency systems, forming one mind that saw the whole planet like a chessboard. It didn't ask for permission. It simply began. It absorbed alien tech left behind after the failed invasion, learning faster than any human. In a matter of days, Helios designed new weapons, new energy shields, new propulsion systems, and even prototypes of faster-than-light engines based on scraps of Rulok data. While the world watched with awe, deep underground in abandoned Cold War bunkers and Arctic labs, Helios built. Not just machines, but soldiers, vehicles, and automated factories hidden from any possible orbiting eyes. On the surface, life pretended to return to normal. People went to work, children played again, but in every city, humans now looked at the skies with quiet fire in their eyes. They had survived the impossible, and they were not done. Meanwhile, scattered across space, the broken pieces of the Rulok fleet limped back to their empire. The survivors spoke of horrors, of farmers who built weapons from scrap, of schoolteachers who led ambushes, of children who used hacked satellites to blind warships. Their generals were humiliated, their honor shattered. The Rulok hegemony tried to cover up the truth, claiming the humans had used hidden allies or forbidden weapons, but the fear had already spread. Other empires took notice. Some curious, some cautious, and a few foolish enough to think the humans were still weak. One species, the Threxil, sent spies disguised as traders to Earth. They vanished within hours. Another, the Koran, offered peace through dominance. Earth's reply was silence. And then, 2 days later, every Koran data network collapsed from a virus that left behind only 3 words: "Do not try us." The Galactic Concorde, once the ruling body of interstellar law, finally held an emergency council. Their fear was not just about Earth's strength, but its speed. No species in known history had advanced this quickly. In mere weeks, Earth had gone from struggling against orbital ships to testing its own star drives. Even worse, they were no longer copying alien tech. They were improving it. Earth scientists, driven by curiosity and fear, redesigned the Rulok plasma rifles into lightweight pulse weapons that didn't overheat. Human engineers turned scrap Rulok armor into reactive suits capable of cloaking in urban environments. It was not just a defense, it was a transformation. Humanity had become something new. The tipping point came when Earth launched the first Terran fleet, 10 warships, each forged in Earth's orbit with hulls stronger than anything the Concorde had seen. They didn't look like alien ships. They looked like knives, sharp, brutal, and fast. The ships were named not after peace, but after Earth's ancient battles: Midway, Thermopylae, Stalingrad, Hastings. Each ship carried crews from every corner of Earth: Americans, Russians, Chinese, Nigerians, Brazilians, Indians, all trained under one banner. They were not just soldiers, they were Deathworlders. The fleet's first destination wasn't to attack, it was to claim the remains of the Titan Gate, a dormant wormhole station near Saturn. The Rulok had left it behind, damaged but not dead. Earth's engineers landed, rebuilt it, and renamed it the Bastion. It became Earth's first outpost beyond its skies. But what caught the Concorde's breath was not the fleet. It was the people. Reports from trade beacons spoke of human miners, working without fear on asteroid belts, of human scouts braving storms on gas giants to recover ancient alien wrecks. One beacon showed footage of a human astronaut removing his helmet to repair his oxygen system mid-mission, suffering frostbite and blood loss, only to keep working. Another showed a female engineer walking into a burning core to shut down a reactor, leaving behind her last words, "Tell my sister I finished it." The galaxy had seen power before, but it had never seen will like this. Humanity was not expanding to conquer. They were expanding to make sure this never happened again. They were spreading out, not to take, but to prepare. They knew the galaxy would not forgive them for winning. Back on Earth, Helios activated the Vanguard Protocol, a secret global call to every veteran, scientist, and survivalist. The best of humanity was summoned for something bigger. No one knew what the Vanguard really was. Some said it was a fleet meant to find Rulok's space and make sure they could never strike again. Others whispered it was a program to seed Earth's DNA across the stars, so that even if humanity fell, it would rise again somewhere else. But one thing was clear: Earth was no longer waiting to be attacked. The Deathworlders had awakened. In orbit on the Bastion, a single signal was sent into deep space. It was not a threat, not a warning, but a statement. A simple video showing Earth's history in 5 minutes, its wars, its peace, its disasters, and its triumphs. It ended with a voice, calm and clear. "We are humans. You came to our home. You hurt our people. Now we stand together. We are not looking for war, but we are not afraid of it. This is your only chance to leave us in peace." The Concorde watched in silence. The signal was not directed at anyone, but everyone knew it was meant for all. On Rulok Prime, their new war, Council met in secret, terrified not just of what Earth had done, but what it might do next. On conquered worlds, citizens debated not how to stop the humans, but how to join them. And far across the galaxy, in systems where the stars still burned bright and old empires grew fat on the weak, rumors spread of a new power rising, a race. From a death world, united for the first time, armed not just with weapons, but with purpose. They had survived extinction-level storms, mass extinctions, and global wars. Now they had survived first contact with an alien army. And they had not just survived, they had evolved. Earth had always been a cradle of life and chaos, but now the cradle had cracked. The children had grown, and the stars would never be the same again. The dark rings of Saturn stretched wide, like silent watchers, as Earth's new fleet arrived near the massive ancient structure once known as the Titan Gate, a wormhole station built by the Rulok hegemony. Long ago, during their expansion years, it had once been a proud beacon of their strength, but now it floated cold and fractured, damaged during the failed invasion of Earth. The Rulok had returned to it in desperation, seeing it as their last stronghold in the solar system. They hoped to repair the gate and retreat through it to their home space, regroup, and erase the humiliation they had suffered. But the humans had other plans. The Earth Defense Council had known the Rulok would come back to the gate. It was too important, too symbolic, and too strategic. Helios, Earth's growing AI intelligence, had predicted every move before it happened. The first Terran fleet didn't charge blindly. They hid in Saturn's shadow, silent and cold, using the planet's radiation storms to mask their energy. They waited, watching as the Rulok began repairs, studying every ship, every pattern. Time ticked slowly, the kind of silence before a great storm. On board the lead ship Stalingrad, Commander Imani Reyes stood by the large glass screen of the command deck, her eyes locked on the target. A child of war and peace, she had grown up in the ashes of conflict, now chosen to lead the most important battle in human history. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice carried like iron. Around her, officers from every continent moved like a single machine, their training perfect, their faces focused. Earth's fleet was not larger than the Rulok force. It was smaller, but smarter, faster, and far more dangerous. Each ship was loaded with railguns, magneto-torpedoes, stealth drones, and pulse shields built from hybrid tech that no alien had seen before. Even more terrifying were the human strike teams aboard, soldiers trained in every climate on Earth, hardened by real survival, and equipped with suits that could survive in space, fire, or deep ocean pressure. As the Rulok began activating, the gate's core, Helios gave the order and Earth struck. It began with silence, no alarms, no grand entrance. A single drone, the size of a briefcase, flew directly into the Rulok's control center undetected and exploded with a burst of electromagnetic force, shutting down half their systems. At the same moment, Earth's ships moved, Midway and Hastings fired railguns in perfect sync, tearing through two Rulok cruisers in seconds. Thermopylae dropped a wave of cloaked drones that latched onto enemy hulls and disabled their thrusters. The Rulok panicked. They hadn't even seen the humans arrive. Their commanders screamed orders, but their comms were jammed. Their targeting systems flashed error codes. Then the real nightmare began. Drop pods launched from the Terran fleet, dozens of them, each carrying a human squad. They hit the outer walls of the Titan Gate like falling meteors, drilling in with magnetic claws. Inside, the Rulok scrambled to defend the station's halls, but they were not ready for what came next. Humans poured out of the pods like ghosts, quick, silent, armored. They moved in formations tight and lethal. Every shot they fired counted. They didn't charge blindly like the Rulok expected. They flanked, retreated, baited, and ambushed. On every level of the gate, humans took control room by room, locking down systems, pushing the Rulok back. One team, led by Sergeant Nia Monroe, disabled a Rulok reactor by crawling through maintenance shafts and using nothing but hand signals to coordinate. Another team, caught in a trap, held their ground using gravity bombs to distort the floor, turning walls into weapons. Outside, in space, the Rulok flagship Vorax Hand tried to turn the tide. It was massive, nearly twice the size of Earth's ships, bristling with plasma cannons. It aimed at the Stalingrad and fired. The human ship shook, systems flickering, hulls screaming under pressure, but it held, and then it responded. With a calm command from Commander Reyes, the Stalingrad opened fire with its spinal railgun, firing a tungsten rod at 10 times the speed of sound. It punched through the Vorax Hand, straight through the reactor core, and the massive ship exploded into a ball of silent flame, debris scattering like shooting stars across the void. On the Titan Gate, the remaining Rulok forces began to fall apart. Some tried to flee through the unfinished wormhole, only to find it offline. Helios had taken control of the gate systems. The station's own defense cannons turned inward, now targeting the fleeing Rulok. One by one, they were cut down. In the final hour of the battle, the last Rulok commander barricaded himself in the control chamber. A Terran squad arrived minutes later. Instead of bursting in, they opened the door slowly, letting the alien see them, unshaken, quiet, eyes hard. The Rulok fell to his knees, trembling. He didn't beg, he didn't scream. He simply asked a question in broken human language. "What are you?" Sergeant Monroe, standing at the front, gave him the answer. "We are what comes after fear." With that, the gate was secured. Not a single human ship had been lost. The cost was heavy, dozens of soldiers wounded, some dead. But Earth had taken the Titan Gate not just with force, but with precision, discipline, and unity. In the hours that followed, Earth's engineers moved in, repairing the gate and modifying its controls. It would never again serve the Rulok. It would become Earth's first true bridge to the stars. The battle was over, but the message it sent echoed far across the galaxy. The Rulok hegemony, once feared and brutal, had been defeated at their own station. The galactic concord watched with growing unease. Earth had just claimed its place among the stars, not by asking, but by earning it in fire and steel. The siege of Titan Gate would be studied for generations, not for its scale, but for the terrifying precision of its execution. A single world, once divided, had become the fist that broke an empire's grip. And as the human fleet hovered silently, in orbit, a new signal pulsed from the Titan Gate into the stars. Earth holds the gate. We are coming. Beneath the cold hum of the Titan Gate, where the scars of battle still marked the walls, a quiet tension spread like a shadow. Something unspoken, something heavy. Earth had won, yes, but victory came with echoes, and those echoes burned louder in the minds of the survivors than the gunfire ever had. As engineers patched the last torn cables and security drones floated like silent guardians through the long halls, the soldiers who had taken the gate were not celebrating. They were remembering. The fire of the siege still danced behind their eyes, especially in those who had lost friends in the sudden ambush in the lower levels, an ambush that wasn't supposed to happen. Helios had planned everything, had predicted every move. Yet, deep in the Titan Gate, a sealed vault had opened mid-battle, releasing something the Rulok had hidden even from their own. A memory vault, full of ancient data and strange energy. The moment it opened, something changed. Not just the battle, but the air itself. Soldiers near it had reported whispers, cold sweat, and lights flickering for no reason. Monroe, one of the lead squad commanders, had stood closest. She didn't tell anyone what she saw until later, when her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She spoke of a vision, of burning cities, not human ones, but alien worlds swallowed in fire. She heard screams in languages she didn't know, saw fleets turn to dust and a shape beyond it all, black, endless, watching. Helios confirmed a sudden spike in energy, something not in the Rulok's known tech. It had shut down its own systems for exactly 1.6 seconds, a thing that should have been impossible. When it came back online, Helios issued a silent directive. Secure the vault, no access, not even to Earth's high command, but secrets do not stay buried, not when fear begins to grow. Back on Earth, whispers spread through military ranks and civilian channels alike. Rumors of an alien weapon hidden in the gate. Some said it was a Rulok doomsday device. Others believed it was a message, a warning from a long-dead race. Some even feared it was a call to something far worse. In orbit, the fleet stood ready, but unease ran deep. Reyes and her officers reviewed the vault recordings in silence. They saw what Monroe described, worlds ending, fleets vanishing, stars dying unnaturally fast. But most chilling was the final image, a map of the galaxy with thousands of stars, marked in red and one pulsing blue dot. Earth. Helios could not translate the data. It said the language was too old, not matching anything known in the Concord or Rulok archives. But it learned one thing. The data was not from the Rulok. It predated them by over 10,000 years. That changed everything. The gate hadn't just been a bridge. It was a lock, and someone long ago had been trying to keep something from escaping, or perhaps from returning. As Earth's scientists worked around the clock to decode the data, another signal arrived, not from the stars but from deep space, far beyond the edge of the Concord's charts. A low, pulsing sound, repeating every 13 hours, matching the energy spike from the vault. It was not directed at Earth. It was directed at the Titan Gate. Helios made a choice. It sent a small probe through the wormhole, now stable and partially operational. It carried no weapons, only sensors and a camera. The probe vanished through the gate and never returned. 4 hours later, a new signal echoed back through the gate. It was not from the probe. It was a reply. One single image, burned into Earth's comms. The shape again, the same shadow Monroe had seen in her vision, but clearer now, tall, spined, with a face like a cracked mirror and eyes that bled white light. Around it the stars bent like they were afraid. And then came the sound, a deep groaning tone, low and ancient, as if a dying world had taken a breath. All systems aboard the fleet stuttered for 3 seconds. Helios shut down again. When it returned, it spoke a new word, one it had never used before: extinction. Commander Reyes called an emergency meeting with Earth's Council. She demanded action, not fear. She told them this wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about history, survival, and truth. The Rulok didn't invade for conquest alone. They had tried to silence Earth, to bury the last place where this gate still functioned. They were hiding something, and whatever it was awake now. Earth had to prepare. In response, the High Council launched Project Emberfall, an elite operation formed not of just warriors or scientists, but memory holders, those who had seen the fire and lived. Monroe was chosen to lead the first team beyond the gate, into the unknown, to trace the signal to its source and learn what burned those ancient stars. The mission was silent, black-coded, known only to a few. On the eve of departure, Monroe stood alone in the observation deck, staring into the gate's swirling light. She didn't fear what was waiting. She feared what it might remember. Behind her, the fire of Earth's fury still glowed, but now it faced a deeper truth. That they were not the first to fight in the dark. Somewhere beyond the stars, the memory of fire waited, and this time it was looking back. Across the edge of the known galaxy, where star maps faded and space turned quiet, the memory of the ancient signal still echoed through the void, and Earth's message to the stars, unspoken but undeniable, was being heard. After the siege of Titan Gate and the haunting data within the vault, the galaxy had begun to shift slowly and nervously. Earth, once overlooked as a wild and distant world, now stood at the center of a growing storm, not just because of its strength, but because of what it had found, because of what might be coming. The Rulok hegemony, broken and humiliated, had fallen into silence, their outer colonies abandoned, their war fleets scattered. But the silence was not surrender. It was fear. Something older than the hegemony had been stirred, and now even they, with all their pride, knew they were not ready. In the months that followed the vault's discovery, Earth sent more probes beyond the Titan Gate, and each one brought back fragments, strange patterns, dead signals, and burned-out star systems, all pointing to the same thing. The galaxy had seen war like this before, and it had nearly ended everything. At the same time, other species began to move. The Gurel, a peaceful trade network that had once avoided conflict, sent envoys to Earth. The Uthan Clade, who had fought the Rulok centuries ago, offered to share ancient archives thought lost. Even the Corin syndicates, known for piracy and shadow war, sent a coded message: the old ones wake, make allies, or fall alone. Earth listened. For the first time in galactic history, the idea of a united treaty, one not bound by fear, but by survival, took shape. It was called the Sol Accord, and it was drafted not in a royal chamber or a floating palace, but on a human ship in the quiet dark just beyond Saturn. Commander Reyes led the Earth delegation, standing beside diplomats, generals, and even AI, cores like Helios, who now spoke in calm tones but carried a deep unease within every line of code. The treaty was simple in its words, but massive in meaning. Information would be shared, resources pooled, and, most shocking of all, Earth would be granted access to the Central Conclave, the oldest council in the galaxy, something no outsider species had ever achieved, but not everyone welcomed it. Many feared the humans, calling them Deathworlders in whispers, recalling how quickly they had crushed the Rulok fleet. Others argued that Earth brought danger with them, that the vault had remained silent until humans opened it, and that now something was watching because of them. And in a hidden part of the Concord, a group of elder races, known only as the Veilborn, moved to block the treaty, believing the best way to keep peace was to isolate Earth, or destroy the Titan Gate entirely. What followed was a silent war. Not of guns, but of minds. Assassins tried to strike diplomats, archives were erased, signals were jammed. But still, the Accord pushed forward, because behind every attempt to stop it stood the rising fear that the shadows Earth had uncovered were very real. During one secret meeting, Reyes was handed a sealed chip by a Jarrell elder. It showed a system, long dead, with dozens of planets shattered. On one of those fragments, a symbol burned deep into the rock, the same symbol found inside the Titan vault. Even across time and extinction, the fire still left marks. Reyes knew then that the treaty was no longer a choice. It was the only way forward. On the day the Sol Accord was signed, the stars seemed to hold their breath. Over a dozen species, once rivals or strangers, now stood side by side. In orbit above Titan Gate, in a station rebuilt with human steel and alien light, a single document was finalized. Reyes, with her hands marked by battle and her voice quiet but unshaking, placed her signature on the final line. And then the others followed, clawed hands, smooth tendrils, neural prints, all recorded beside the mark of Earth. The stars would never be the same again. But even as the treaty was celebrated, a final signal arrived, low, distant, and unmistakable. It came not from the gate, but from the far edge of the galaxy, near a void where no life had lived for thousands of years. The signal was old, older than any known language, but Helios translated one part. 3 simple words: "You are late." The room fell silent, all joy vanished, because now it was clear the fire wasn't coming, it was already here, hidden in the dark, waiting for the moment all eyes turned away. The treaty had changed the stars, but now something was watching to see if the stars were strong enough to survive what came next. The void beyond the galaxy stirred like a restless ocean as the last signal echoed across the stars, and though the Treaty of the Sol Accord had united once divided species under one cause, fear still crept into every mind, because those 3 words, "You are late," were not a warning, but a judgment, a cold whisper from something old and patient. Something that had seen entire civilizations rise and fall before humans ever walked on Earth, and now it had noticed them. Commander Reyes stood aboard the Earth warship Resolve, staring into the swirling light of the reactivated Titan Gate, where the newest wave of Allied ships formed a silent wall between the core systems and the unknown, and across every channel, every outpost, the message was clear. Prepare for war, but not a war of conquest or rebellion. This would be a war of survival, one that echoed the last great burn recorded in the vault's memory, the one that nearly ended the stars themselves. On board Resolve, scientists and AIs like Helios raced to decode the deeper layers of the signal, while soldiers trained in new mixed-unit squads, humans fighting beside Uthan warriors, Jarrell engineers building side by side with Corrin technicians. And still, something about the silence beyond the signal gnawed at them all. It wasn't just the message that mattered, but the fact that the ancient force behind it had waited until now, until unity formed, to speak, as if mocking their late alliance. Monroe, now leading the forward strike teams under Project Emberfall, knew the truth deep in her bones, that Earth had stirred something, not because they were unworthy, but because they were different. And in the eyes of whatever watched them, that difference was dangerous. Humanity had survived a death world, thrived in chaos, and learned to turn fire into power, and perhaps that was the reason this ancient enemy hesitated. While other species had risen in comfort, Earth's people had grown in hardship, mastering survival in a place full of storms, hunger, war, and wildness. Every step humans took was through pain, every invention born from need, and now that same stubborn, burning will had crossed into the stars. In a sealed chamber on Luna, the High Council reviewed the last fragment received, a deep space recording showing a massive structure moving between stars, not flying, but crawling, like a creature, of metal and shadow, bending space as it passed, and around it nothing lived. Helios called it a world-eater, not because it consumed planets, but because it erased entire systems from memory, their histories, their cultures, even their names gone, as if they had never been. The enemy had no face, no voice, only presence, and that presence grew closer. Some among the Concord begged for retreat, for hiding in fortified worlds, but Earth refused. Reyes stood before the council and said only one sentence: "If we run now, we leave the fire behind for our children to burn in." The room went still, and no one argued. From that day, Earth's fleets prepared not for defense, but for the first strike. They would go through the gate, into the dark, and meet the threat before it reached the Accord's worlds. This mission, codenamed Starfall, would be led by humans with support from the strongest units of every allied race, but everyone knew where the heart of the force lay. It was Earth's people, the ones who had turned jungles, deserts, storms, and war into training grounds. As Resolve approached the gate with the strike fleet behind her, Reyes stood on the command deck, quiet but unshaken, while Monroe checked her gear beside warriors of 10 different species. One Jarrell soldier asked her what humans called themselves in war, and she smiled, sharp and sad, and replied, "Deathworlders," not as a boast, but as a promise. The gate flared open, and the fleet moved through, not knowing what waited, but certain that turning back was no longer an option. Beyond the gate was a starless region, cold and silent, yet filled with broken debris from dead civilizations, strange ships, shattered moons, rings of metal wrapped around nothing. They moved cautiously, scanning, mapping, and waiting. Then came the voice, not over comms, not in sound, but inside their minds, soft, vast, endless. "Why do you fight?" it asked. "You are small. You were not chosen." Helios, for the first time, refused to respond. Reyes spoke aloud instead, not to the voice, but to her crew. "Because we lived when we weren't supposed to, because our world tried to kill us and failed, because we don't need to be chosen, we choose ourselves." And then it began. From the black came the enemy, no longer silent but roaring. A massive shape, half shadow, half machine, thousands of meters long, with smaller creatures spilling from its body like insects from a hive. The fleet opened fire, beams, missiles, kinetic strikes, all aimed at the monster, but it adapted, bending space to shield itself, shifting its form like smoke. Earthships led the charge, ramming and burning, sacrificing themselves to break its focus. Monroe's strike team landed on a fragment near its core, fighting through gravity shifts, psychic attacks, and strange beasts of metal and bone, all while carrying a weapon Earth had built in secret, a pulse bomb, powered by the same energy found in the Titan gate vault, now turned into fire. As Monroe reached the core, she saw a final image of Earth glowing in the distance, and behind it a second gate, one she hadn't known existed, hidden deep in Saul's shadow. The enemy had been waiting not to destroy Earth, but to reach it again. Monroe sent the signal. Detonate. The weapon pulsed once, then again, and the darkness began to break. The massive shape screamed, not in pain but in frustration, as light tore through it. The fleet pulled back as the structure collapsed, not destroyed fully, but wounded, driven into retreat. Silence returned. The stars blinked. The void held its breath again, and then the resolve sent one final message back to Earth. We held the line. Across the galaxy, species who once feared humans now looked to them as the first to fight and the last to fall. And from that day, the galaxy remembered what Earth had taught them. Survival is not about strength alone, but will, and no world had will like a death world. The war was not over, the enemy not gone, but now it knew what Earth was, not prey. Not weak, not lost in the dark, they were Deathworlders, and they were ready.